Correct?
Oui. Ok. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good evening.
Bonsoir.
Can you hear me?
Bien sûr, pour la procédure, je dois
Or
reprendre ou bien la vidéo
do,
enregistrée qui va servir.
do I have to play the video because I was not at the beginning? I apologize for being late, but I have some technical issues. What should I do now? Should I play the recording or can you hear me?
Vous m'entendez?
Can anybody answer to her? Should she be playing her video or not?
Yes.
Donc,
Goro?
oui.
Yes.
Je reprends ma présentation ou bien c'est la vidéo.
Do you want me to do my presentation or should I play my video?
If you can play your video, that would be great. If you can share the screen and play the video, Yolande, if you could enable her to just do screen sharing, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Ok, donc je reprends la vidéo.
I will show my video.
Bien sûr, c'est le français.
Oh, it's in French.
Je suis parmi les anglophones.
That is.
Do you want me to wait a little? I wanted to say that in Mali, for a long time, throughout the acquisition of real estate, I am having some technical issues, sorry.
No problem.
With my apologies, but I am having a technical problem. So for a long time, the violence towards women has been a taboo subject in our society. And until proved otherwise, conservation regime. So violence towards women are permanent and universal. We are victims of violence regardless of age, ethnical origin, identity, either cultural or other, and social economic status, religion, sexual orientation, physical aptitudes, personality, or residence. In Mali, there is a judicial or legal regime to protect women as we have in other countries. However, its enforcement is not enough, and it is often unknown by the population that should be using it in case of need. In Mali, so I'm going to talk about some laws regarding real estate. This is a regulation of real estate, what is related to management of natural resources and decentralization. It is Law 8681 AEM from the Republic of Mali, RM. We also have the law of 95 on the management of natural resources, and that determines the way and the condition of acquisition of land, of private land, as well as in February 91, we have the mode of assignment of the land, and what is more important, the Romanian Code. So we can see that violence towards women are more often and referred to in real estate issues. In Africa, I am sorry, I have a technical issue here. Sorry.
No problem. Koro, what we could also do,
Koro,
if you
what
want.
we could do, if you like.
Sorry, I hear myself now. Okay.
Can you please give me a minute? Please give me a minute.
Sure.
Communication has been limited there. Please hold on a minute.
Sure.
Oui, 1 minute. Donc, ça, c'est... OK, oui. Partage. 1 minute encore. On va vous partager ça. C'est...
1 more minute. I will be sharing something with you. Sorry.
Okay.
So we have it here. I think that I have shared my presentation with you on the screen. Please, my apologies. I was saying that our country has legal resources to defend women's rights, but we can see that it is not well known, not only by women, but also by many other players that should be using it to enforce it. Access to land is the principle of concurrence. And then we have the traditional principle as well that is the most used. And we can also see that modern law on real estate law, this modern law for resources for decentralization has given us some laws that will be specifying the forest lands and the way that it has to be, the land has to be assigned when it belongs to the country. And then, in spite of all of that, we can see that there's violence towards women that is so concerning, particularly on urban areas. So the way of acquiring habitat cannot be accessed by women. There are different ways. In order to become a homeowner, you have to have a counterparty. If you don't have a counterparty, that will be the purchase itself. And if there is not that purchase, you can do it freely among people if there is death involved. We can see from accession land on inheritance law. This sale is the most frequent way of obtaining property. It is about a contract that will be operated by means of paying an amount of money for the property, and the sales can be purchase credit or cash. Then, because of their poverty condition, they are faced to the lack of resources in order to buy the land or habitat. Being sale, the most frequent way of acquiring property. It is about contract between transfer of property by means of paying an amount of money by the buyer. And this
Excuse
is
me?
a repetition as well. I already talked to you about, and I think that
Coro?
my images are fixed.
Can
Coro?
you, ah,
Ah, I am moving forward. I am moving forward, and I apologize for all of this. Well, this inheritance is another way of acquiring property. It is not enforceable for women because there is a disposition of traditional law saying that women are not entitled to own land or habitat, either heritage or succession. So this is after somebody dies and you could have free access to the property. And yes, when somebody dies, it's properties, real estate properties and debts are inherited. There can be one or several people according to the law, according to the ranking in kinship. So the most traditional way of doing things is through traditional law. So those provisions will forbid women to have access to habitat or real estate. Women will not be entitled to receive the property. This traditional law is the origin of so many issues that women have been trying to solve without success. Malian women are under a condition that does not enable them to become owners. In spite of the fact that there are modern laws that entitle them that they should have access to property. Another way is marriage. We have a modern code for marriage. The husband is the one that will be choosing the place and where that woman will be living. So those women, when the husband dies, they are kicked out of the house. And even the children can also suffer the consequences and be kicked out. They have to go to social habitat. Many women have access through the policies that have been started by the chief of the state. Women, according to their social status, are facing two different problems: the acquisition of social habitat. They have to be paying the monthly fees to have access to that social habitat, and they are confronted to another issue that when they are declared beneficiary, then the teens can come and try to take them out. So we have two types of social we habitat. There are those that have a toilet there and two bedrooms, but there are others that are much more expensive because they are better equipped. So there are two range of qualities and prices. Here, women are excluded from the ownership of property, even if they do, we see them involved in so many legal processes, and obviously some of them are head of family, and that it has an impact on their family and children for their subsistence.
Koro, excuse me?
On the
Sorry.
2 cases, sorry.
Could you wrap up in 2 minutes?
Would you please
and we can then,
in 2 minutes?
And then we can share your full presentation with the participants later if you want to, but this is just to give a bit of time for discussion with you and with Dorothy. Is that okay?
So, le premier cas concerne une femme de
So the first case has to do with a 56-year-old lady that has been kicked out of her house with her 5 children. And there was a problem with its daughter and husband having a very tough argument. Well, and another woman was kicked out of her house because she didn't want to go with her husband somewhere else, and the entire family was against her and kicked her out. So here we have to do this advocacy and elaborating text favoring women's access to ownership of the land and habitat. Obviously, I think that we should see everything that has to do with common lands and real estate, either urbanist involvement, the jurist involvement. We have to be really involved in favoring legal assistance for women having their access to ownership in urban areas. And then we should also teach women because they have to know how to advocate for their rights, advocating for modern laws that are in favor of women's access. It is reasonable to have a habitat for women. Most of the women should have access to an habitat and be able to have a permanent service to have access to it. I think that this is not a luxury, this is a necessity in the development of the family because it is women that is in charge of education and that is in subsistence of the family. So applying, enforcing the laws is necessary. That would be good and it would be good for women. Advocacy vis-a-vis authorities in favor of women that are demanding social habitat. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Koro, for this presentation.
The end of my session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for Dorothy. And now I will speak in Arabic just يعني في الواقع مدخلات كثيرة ومدخلات مفيدة جدا.
Very useful inputs. Personally, I have a lot of questions, but before that, I would like to listen to the participants. Do they have any questions to the speakers? We have 10 minutes for questions and answers. Please raise your hand, unmute, and pose your question.
I have a question. This is Priscilla. Sorry, I didn't find the hand to go. Can I ask my question?
It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Dorothy and Kobo for the presentations. I wanted, and I'm sorry if I missed that, but if both of you could very quickly talk about, do you see a possibility of change, improvement of the situation of the women in relation to access to land and to housing coming anytime soon? And, you know, could be brief, but just for us to have an idea of possibilities of transformation. Thank you very much.
Traduction.
شكرا. هلا دعنا ناخذ يعني كمان سؤال ومن ثم نعود لكي ناخذ اجابات مره واحده بعد اذنك. سيدة أنا تفضلي.
Let's listen to a couple of other questions and then we come back to the answers.
أقول دعنا نأخذ أكثر من سؤال ومن ثم يعني تجيبين في النهاية على الأسئلة بعد إذنك لكي نحكم الوقت. ما وصلها. طيب هلا بنخلي تعيده بشكل مختصر.
As in, there are two more hands. In case you can't see them, one is from Anna Maria, and then the second hand from Carol Nievas.
نعم ولكن المشكلة أنها لم تسمع السؤال الأول. سنعود إلى ذلك فيما بعد.
There could be a problem that Koro didn't hear the question, the translation of the question, but I'm not sure. Let's listen to Nievas Caro.
كارو إن كنت تتحدثين المايك مغلق. حسنا نجرب مع نادية.
Nadia.
Sorry, I think there's a bit of delays coming through with the interpretation. So Hazem, I know you asked Carol to take the floor. Carol, do you want to take the floor? And then Hazem, maybe you can also write in the chat and then we know the speaker.
Okay, yes, we called Anna, I think, at the time.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Hello, how is everyone? Thank you so much for sharing these experiences. I'm calling in from Argentina, and my question is for both of you. What sort of advocacy do you think that you have? You know, like, for example, international treaties against violence against women. Is there any impact of international treaties in these areas? Are there any advocacy or institutions that are working at the international in connection with this international level? Thank you.
شكرا كارو.
Thank you, Caro.
آخر سؤال ومن ثم نتلقى الأجوبة من خبرائنا.
Another question, then we listen to the answers from our experts.
Buenos días, desde aquí de Oaxaca, México.
Good morning from Oaxaca, Mexico. Thank you so much for both of the presentations from our sisters. And I've really found a lot of similarities with the case regarding ownership and access to ownership in indigenous communities here in Mexico, from what has been stated. So here in Mexico, we do have a legal framework that has been changing over time to try to enable access for women to land ownership, especially in communal land. Now, my question and comment is, how could we see a positive change regarding cultural change that could favor changes in political advocacy at the community level? How can we help at that level to do advocacy work? And how could we denounce in, for example, national and international networks, how could we begin to denounce these very common problems of access to ownership of land and the violence that is actually generated as a result of this. Because while there could be changes in legislation in different countries, it's quite important to create the proper local conditions that really make it possible for women to have that participation and ownership. So that's my comment as well as my question. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا أنا.
Thank you very much, Anna. Nadia?
الخبراء إذا رجاء تفضلي نادية.
Go ahead, Nadia, then we'll listen to the experts.
Hola. Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes.
Hello,
buenas noches.
hello, good morning, good afternoon, good dawn, good evening. I'm speaking from Chubut in Argentina. And as I was hearing the experiences that you were sharing, I was thinking about this. If there are spaces for women to come together and to have assemblies and to begin to propose these demands that they have, or if there's any possibility for education and training outside of institutional education, you know, so on these issues. That was my question for both of our speakers. Thank you so much.
شكرا.
Thank you, thank you.
متحدثينا رجاء تفضلوا، لدينا 4 أسئلة مهمة وزخمة جدا. لحظة تفضلوا في الإجابة على الأسئلة.
Can we have now the answers to the questions?
سيدة دورثي.
Sorry, I was not sure who should go first.
Dorothy?
Okay, so I can start. Thank you for the questions. I will try to be as brief as I respond to all of them. Priscilla asked about the possibility of change and improvement for women and whether it is coming soon. I think there's a lot of positive work that is going into supporting women to be able to articulate their issues. In Uganda, a lot of work has been done by civil society organizations, and there's a lot of change that is coming up. For example, civil society organizations helping to build referral pathways, helping to institute gender-based violence homes where women who have been victims of gender-based violence can go to seek support, provision of legal aid, as well as also making sure that we can articulate at a national level to influence policies to be more than just theoretical frameworks, but actual practical implementable actions on ground. So I think there's a lot of change that is coming up. We just still need a bigger boost. And by a bigger boost, I mean we need the support of the government of Uganda to clearly pronounce itself on some of these issues. Caro talked about the advocacy at international level. Yes, we actually, as Uganda, we have just gone through our universal periodic, the 3rd cycle of our universal periodic review. And we've also been presenting our report at the CEDAW. But the challenge with this is that there's a disconnect between the international laws and the actual practical implementation on ground. So it does not connect. So you find that while our country is reporting a lot of positive change and all, it does not translate to the grassroots women. In terms of culture, we are engaging with the cultural institutions. We are engaging with the cultural leaders. We are engaging with men. one of the approaches that we have is to work with men who are change agents, who have been supportive of the women in their families owning land, regardless of whether it's their wife or the daughter or the relative. But these are the people that we're using to talk to their fellow men. We're using the cultural leaders to talk to their cultural leaders so that we can see some change. In some areas, for example, in Uganda, where the Muslim faction has their particular Sharia law, we are trying to insist that they should be able to implement it to the book, rather than falling back on the culture, and yet the Sharia law says something different from what the culture says. So we are trying to use the wins that we have in different institutions, the religious institutions and the cultural institutions, to influence all the others. So I'm hoping that this will come together. As the last one on the education and training, aside from the institutional level, there's NGOs and civil society that are doing a lot of women empowerment programs. But you find that there's a lot of work that is going into small pockets of women, and they're not able to bring it together, to consolidate it, to have a collective voice. So that is something that is still work in progress, but I'm seeing more and more change coming up as a result of these different initiatives. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا دورثي على الإجابة الغنية جدا.
Thank you, Dorothy, about this very rich answer. In Islamic Sharia, so there is a lot about dividing inheritance, particularly in the MENA region. Koro, do you have any other addition in just 2 minutes?
هل لدينا أي سؤال آخر؟
Do we have any other questions? Mara, go ahead. My colleague Mara, go ahead.
Adelante. Thank you, Sam. Everything we've heard and shared is very interesting. The Uganda, the Mali experiences are extremely interesting. My name is Manasar. I come from Argentina. I am working as a facilitator in this very interesting space of the feminist approaches, a co-learning space to learn amongst everyone. Well, it is up to me now to introduce some testimonials from other regions based on some clips that they sent us. The first of them is going to be the voices of Nadia and Jamila, who are from Argentina, Berlao. They belong to the Network for a Fair Habitat, a feminist network that is in charge of connecting actors, organizations, and institutions to have a fair habitat. So Network for a Fair Habitat, it belongs to the Habitat Argentina collective, which is also made up by organizations, institutions, be them social and academic and peasant movements. There are also legislators who work with the purpose of creating a regulatory framework to guarantee the right to housing, to the land, and to dignified living for everyone. And this is something that you will see in the video. Nadia and Yamil, they'll be presenting their testimony. So we're ready for the clip to be rolled.
Nadine, could you share, please? Thank you.
My name is
Nadesh Manzana. I'm a trans activist from the Trelew city, the Patagonian, Argentina. I live in the Chubut province. I work at a Trans Argentina organization, Trans Argentina Women's Organization.
Decimos que somos transfeminista y popular, hacemos
This is the type of
referencia
advocacy
a que somos
we
las
do.
travestis y las trans que venimos
When
de
we
los
say we are
barrios
trans,
populares y los
feminist,
barrios
and popular, we
empobrecidos.
mean that we are
7, 8 años
transvestites
es cuando
and trans
comencé
that come from
a
popular
expresar
slums.
Y visibilizar a través de modismos,
At age
a
7,
través
this
de
is when
dejarme
I
el cabello
started to
largo
express
y a
and
través de quizás
make it visible
con
that I self-identify as woman by
que en la
growing my
cultura,
hair
en
long,
nuestra
by
cultura, en
some
Argentina y también a nivel
expressions
mundial
of
se la considera
that
femenina
in
o se
my
la
culture, in our
considera
culture in
de la
Argentina
mujer y se
and at the
lo
worldwide
ve
level are
y se lo
considered
sigue
to be
viendo
feminine
como
or
raro,
exclusively
extraño
of
en una
women,
identidad disidente y
and
fue
it is still being
fuerte cuando
regarded
comencé a
as
expresar
a trait
esa identidad
that
travesti
is
trans
weird for a dissident. So it
primero
was very tough for me when I
en parte de
started
mi
to
familia que por ahí no lo
express my
aceptaba,
transvestite
las
identity. First of all,
violencias
my
sobre todo
relatives didn't
verbales más allá
accept
de las
it.
simbólicas, ¿no?
I suffered a lot of violence,
Quizás
especially verbal abuse,
si bien
as well as
fui
symbolic
abrazada por una parte de mi familia,
violence.
que lo debo decir,
So
con mucho
even though
amor y
I
por
was
eso
embraced
también
by some of
hoy
the
estoy donde estoy
relatives in my
parada, pero
family
también
who
hubo una
were very loving,
parte de mi
and
familia
that
que
is
fue
why I was strong
tremendamente
enough to be where I'm
violento. Yo
standing
puedo
at now,
hablar por
but
el
there was
colectivo
another part
travesti
of my
trans,
family
pero
who was
también
very
milito
violent.
junto a otras
I
organizaciones,
cannot talk on
que
behalf
está el
of all the
colectivo
collective,
gay,
but
está el
I
colectivo de
do
compañeras
present
lesbianas,
my
está
testimony,
el
but there's
colectivo de
also the gay
compañeras no
collective, there's
binarias,
the
que un
lesbian
poco
collective,
la
there is the
realidad del
non-binary
hábitat
group.
donde nosotros nos situamos,
And
que es en la provincia,
the
que es en
reality
Chubut, que
of
es
our
en
habitat
Trelew, que
where
es en
we
Puerto
live,
Madryn, que
which
es en
is
Comodoro
the province of
Rivadavia,
Chubut,
la violencia
Puerto Madryn,
es
Lover,
similar. O
Rivadavia,
sea, en
all
mi
those provinces
caso y en el
here,
caso de
the
varias compañeras por
violence
ahí, las de
is
mi
all the
generación,
same. In my case, in
nos
the case of some
encontramos
other of
gracias
our
a una autora
peers,
que es Estela Manzano, muy
we have been
reconocida
attacked, we
en
have
nuestra
been abused.
provincia, en Chubut, y también reconocida
There's an author,
nacionalmente en
Book of
Argentina
the
por su
Apple,
lucha por el
an
aborto
author who's
legal,
very
seguro y gratuito,
well
como
acknowledged
que ella le
in
iba
our province
proponiendo y nos
and
iba
at the
charlando
national
y
level
nos iba
because of her fight
convenciendo
in favor
de a
of
poco. O sea,
abortion
es como
rights.
que yo decía,
She
¿qué
is
hace
the
esta
one
mujer? ¿Qué
who
dice
little
esta
by little
mujer? Porque
created
en
awareness
realidad
of
soy una
this
adolescente que andaba
subject. So
en
when I first
otra,
heard her, it was,
quizás
what is she talking
buscando
about?
para comer o
Because
cómo
I
subsistir,
didn't
porque el
understand
90% en Argentina
why
de
he
las
did this.
travestis y las trans
90% in
subsiste o
Argentina
ha subsistido
of
de
all
la
trans and
prostitución,
transvestite
de la
will survive or
prostitución
have
pobre.
survived
Nosotras cuando hablamos
out
de
of
prostitución
prostitution
hablamos
work
de aquella
or poor prostitution work, because when we talk
travesti o
about
trans que está
prostitution,
parada
we mean
en una esquina pasando
the
frío, donde está
transvestite
expuesta
trans
a toda la
who stand
violencia.
at
No
the
estamos
corner,
hablando de una
exposed to the
autonomía
cold and to
o
the
decir
violence
es
of
nuestra
everyone.
cuerpa y con
We're
ella
not speaking about
la explotamos nosotras,
sex
sino
work
que
that
el
is
mismo sistema
autonomous,
a
to be
través de la
exploited
expulsión y la
because of a
exclusión
personal
nos
decision.
dejaba
It's
como
something
única
that
alternativa el
since
ir a
we've been
pararnos en la
excluded
esquina y
and
subsistir de
expelled,
eso.
this
Así
is
que
the
muchas
only alternative we
de las
had
adolescentes
to go
travestis y
stand
trans de ese
at the corner
entonces
and live from this type
transitábamos
of prostitution work.
esos
So
espacios y era donde estábamos
many of my
ahí, y
peers,
lo que conlleva la
this is
prostitución,
what we did.
que
This
en la
is
prostitución
where
no
we would be
solamente
found
es vender el
doing
cuerpo
prostitution work, and
o la
prostitution
explotación que se
is not
utiliza
only
a través
selling your body
de los
the
clientes
exploitation that
o de
is
los que
experienced
consumen
by
la
the
prostitución,
customers
sino que
or
también
people who consume prostitution,
transitas
rather
violencias, se ve más el alcohol, la
there's
droga, muchas
lots of
compañeras cayeron
different
en la
alcohol,
droga,
drugs,
enfermedades de
violence,
transmisión sexual, o
diseases,
sea, estás
and
expuesta
sexually
a
transmitted
mucha más
diseases, I
violencia
mean,
todavía.
so you are truly
Retomo
exposed to
nuevamente
the worst of
ahí
violence.
y Estela Manzana es como nos reunió a todas
So
una
going
vez,
back to what I
y
was
ahí
saying,
no,
Stella Manzana
recuerdo una de
gathered
las
us all,
preguntas
this
fue ¿qué sueñan
feminist
ustedes?
pro-abortion activist
Y
that I
es como
told you
que
about, and she
una
asked us,
pregunta
what
quizás
is your
tan
dream?
básica
Do
o
you have a
quizás
dream?
que la
And that
sociedad
was
se
a
puede
question
preguntar
that is so
habitualmente,
basic,
pero
if
nosotras
you
no
may.
la teníamos.
Everyone perhaps
Yo nunca me
asked
había
this,
preguntado qué era lo que
but we
soñaba porque ni
didn't.
siquiera soñaba. Yo vivía
I
el
had
día a día
never
como
dared
podía y listo. Entonces como que esta pregunta la
because I was so
recuerdo
busy
porque es
surviving.
como ahí
So this
nosotras,
is a
o por lo
question
menos en mi
I
caso,
remember that
me
when I was asked
repensé y
that
dije,
because
bueno,
it
yo
was a shock.
tengo el
That is
derecho
something
también
that
a
made me think,
soñar
okay,
o
do
a
I have a
pensarme
right
de
to
otra
dream? Do
manera.
I have
Y ahí es
the
cuando
right to conceive
inclusión
I
del
could
feminismo y nos
experience a
empezó a
different
hablar
type of
de
life, and this is
derecho, de
where
ciudadanía,
she
de
talked
lo
to us
que
about
nos
feminism and
correspondía por el hecho
rights and
solamente de ser
citizenship,
persona y
the
que no
right to
estaba
habitat,
bien,
and that just
o
by
lo
the
que la
mere
sociedad
fact of being
naturalizaba
a
de
human being,
que
we
las
were
travestis y
entitled
las
to
trans
rights,
lo único que
and
podían
that
hacer era
what society
prostituirse, vivir hasta los
normalized
35, 40 años, que esa es otra
the way in
realidad
which they
tremenda que
excluded
tenemos en
transvestites and
Argentina, que
trans,
tenemos en
that's a
Latinoamérica, que es
harsh
que nuestro
reality,
colectivo travesti
and
trans
how we were
tiene una
condemned to live
expectativa de
until the age 30 or
35
35
a
and no
40
longer than
años,
that.
a
That
pesar
is our
del
life
avance que hemos
expectancy,
tenido y que lo
35 years
celebramos,
old.
como la
In
ley de
spite
cupo
of the
laboral
fact that
travesti trans,
we have had
la
some
ley de identidad de
progress, now
género,
there
la
is
ley
a
Micaela,
quota
que
law
hoy
for trans,
obliga
the law
a todos
for
los
gender
sectores del
identity,
Estado
the
a que se
Micaela law,
capaciten no
that is
solamente
now
en perspectiva de
forcing all
género,
of
sino
the
también en
agencies of the
perspectiva de
state to be
diversidad, y
trained
eso
not
está
only in
haciendo
the
un
gender
cambio
perspective, but also
estructural
in the
fuerte,
diversity
pero
perspective. And this is
a
changing
pesar
our
de todos estos
lives, is
avances,
changing the
nuestro
structures
colectivo
for the better,
travesti
little by
trans
little. But in
todavía
spite of
sigue
it all, in spite of all
teniendo
of the
una
progress,
expectativa
our
de vida de
collective
35 a
transvestite
40
trans
años.
collective
Nosotros
is
no
still having
solamente
a life
estamos para
expectancy of
visibilizar
only
las
35
violencias
years.
o las fallas que tiene el
So
Estado
we're
para con nosotras,
here
sino también
to
estamos
speak
para
about the
construir
violence, to speak about how
las
the state is
soluciones.
failing
Nosotras
us,
creemos
and
que
also we're here
un
to
hábitat
construct the
feminista,
solution.
un
We
hábitat
believe that
en el que
a
podamos vivir
feminist
nosotras las
habitat, a
travestis,
habitat in which we
nosotres,
can
los
all live
compañeros
together,
gays, las
we as
compañeras
transvestites and
lesbianas,
trans people,
les no
we
binarias,
as, or
se
gay or
construye
lesbians
entre
or
todos y se
non-binary
construye
people, everything
pensando
we
las
can build, it's going to
problemáticas
be done
que atraviesan las
altogether,
diferentes
thinking about the
identidades
problems
y
that are
escuchando
cross-cutting,
siempre
and
en
that
primera
we all
persona
suffer from our different
qué es lo que
identities,
está
and by
atravesando
listening always from the first
esa
person perspective,
identidad, esa
what
orientación
others
sexual, donde
are
estamos escuchando y
experiencing
también
in their sexual
construyendo
orientation,
una
in their
agenda en
identity, in
común,
their
o sea que el
otherness. We
Estado
pay
pueda
attention with
tener
empathy,
en
we're
cuenta
creating a
las
common
organizaciones
agenda,
sociales a la
so
hora de
that the
construir
state
políticas
can
públicas y
listen to
también a
social
la hora de
organizations of the
implementar
diversity when
aquellas que ya hemos
drafting public
conquistado.
policies
Hola, mi
and when
nombre es Nadia
implementing
Jamil
those
Rosario
that
Zúñiga
we have
Sánchez. Yo soy una guía
achieved. My name is
travesti.
Nadia Zúñiga
Soy de
Sánchez.
la
I
ciudad
am a
de
transvestite
Trelew,
woman
Chubut, República Argentina. Vivo en el
from the
barrio
city
Tiro
of Reloj,
Federal.
Chubut, in
Es uno de los
the
barrios que a veces es
Republic of
considerado
Argentina. I
como
live in the Tiro
marginal.
Federal neighborhood. It's one of the neighborhoods that I've
Destaco esto
considered to
justamente
be
porque
as
es
marginal.
importante poder decir desde dónde una está hablando, ¿no?
And I speak of this because I think it is important
Quiero
to be able to
agradecer a
say
la red
where
por
you're
un hábitat
standing when you
justo,
speak.
esta invitación a
I would like to
pensarnos y
thank
justamente
that
a pensar
network
el
for a
hábitat
fair
desde una
habitat for
perspectiva
the
o desde
invite
la
to
perspectiva
think
de los
about ourselves, to think
feminismos.
about the habitat
Me
from
gustaría
a perspective
aclarar
of
algo, decir
feminism.
primero qué entiendo por feminismo. Para mí el
Let me clarify
feminismo tiene
something.
4
First of all, what do I
elementos
understand by feminism? To me,
esenciales, voy a
feminism
decir,
has
que es
four
la
elements that are
equidad, la
essential,
igualdad, la desopresión
which is
y lo justo.
equity,
Estos 4
equality,
elementos me
fighting oppression, and
permiten,
fighting for what's
digo,
fair.
cuando
Those
hago
four elements
introspección, de
can help
pensar
us
si la praxis que estoy llevando
when we
adelante
reflect
tiene o no feminismo, o
whether
tiene algo que ver
our
o no
practice,
con
our
esto, con
practices
el campo
are truly
teórico
feminist or
del
are truly
feminismo.
related to the
Para
theoretical
pensar el hábitat
framework of feminism.
desde esta mirada, digo,
So in order for us to think
remite,
about
voy
the
a decir,
habitat
a
from
otro
this
elemento más que
perspective,
justamente que es la intersección. Digo,
we
poder
should
pensar
also consider
lo
another
justo,
element, which
el
is
acceso al hábitat
intersectionality,
desde lo
being able to
justo,
about what's
sería poder
fair.
pensar,
Access
digo,
to habitat of,
la,
in terms of fairness
la
would mean for
multiplicidad
us
de
to think
identidades que
about
somos, digo,
respect
y poder construir, voy a
of
decir,
the multiplicity
hábitats
of
en función
identities
de
that we
las
are,
necesidades,
and to be able to
¿sí?
construct
que tienen
habitats that are based on our
las
needs, our specific
identidades,
needs,
y
according
corrernos,
to
sí,
each one
de
of
esa
our
idea de un
of our
sujeto universal,
identities. And
corrernos de
with
la
this,
idea de una ciudadanía,
hold
un
on to the
ciudadano
idea of a
universal,
universal
digo, porque
subject
cuando
and
justamente
a universal
marco la palabra
citizen,
ciudadano, ciudadana,
but I
que
speak
decir,
about
porque estamos
citizen,
pensando
including men,
justamente en un
women,
derecho
non-binary,
humano.
because we're thinking
A mí me
about
parece que la
human
violencia
right.
más fuerte,
It seems
digo,
to
es la
me that the
invisibilización,
strongest type of
¿no?
violence
Porque
we suffer is
justamente
when we are
el
made
no
invisible, we're
existir
rendered invisible.
es lo
Because
que nos hace
if you
pensar
don't
derecho para algo
exist,
que no existe, ¿no?
that's how you renounce renouncing to your rights because you have no existence. And that makes a
marca
difference.
existencia, digo, marca humanidad.
But when you
digo,
speak
y
about
entonces
existence,
una
humanity, then
reviste, una porta todo, voy a decir, porta todos esos derechos humanos que
You are a
que nos asisten,
carrier
¿no?
of all human
Y
beings'
esto
rights, if you may.
justamente hace
We
que,
become a holder of
digo,
those rights. And this
asistamos a
is
otro
what
tipo
has
de
made it
violencia como el no acceso a la educación, el no acceso a la
witnesses of
justicia, el
other
no
types of
acceso a la
violences,
salud,
such as the
¿sí?
lack
El
of
no
access
acceso a
to
la familia, el no
education,
acceso a
a
los
lack of access to
esparcimientos,
justice, to
digo,
health,
porque en
to
cada espacio
having a
donde
family,
vamos,
to have
digo,
leisure
somos
activities, because
lo
everywhere we go,
raro,
everywhere,
lo que no
we're
debería
always
estar,
the weird
¿no?
ones,
O
the
vamos
weirdos.
como,
We
se
shouldn't
nos sigue
be there, we should
marcando aún
exist.
todavía en una
We're
sociedad
wrong.
heterosexual, digo,
We're still
patriarcal,
being discriminated
binaria,
against in
como
this
lo
heterosexual,
exótico,
patriarchal,
como lo
binary society
hipersexualizado,
as
como lo
the other. We
promiscuo,
have the
y ese tipo
otherness,
de
the
violencia
hypersexualized,
que van como
synonym of promiscuity,
humillando
and this type of
nuestra propia
violence
existencia, ¿no? Yo
that
recuerdo
little
que
by
en una
little
oportunidad, por
wears
ejemplo,
us
alguien me
down, wears
preguntó
down our
dónde
existence. I
había
remember
sufrido
that
mayor
once somebody
violencia,
asked me,
si en mi barrio, digo,
where
por eso
have I
mencioné el
experienced the
barrio al
greatest violence?
inicio,
Was it in my
o en el
neighborhood? That is why I
centro.
spoke of the slums of the
Y
hood
mi
in the
respuesta
beginning.
fue que la
Or
mayor
was it
violencia a lo largo de la vida
in
la he sufrido al
the
menos
center?
yo en el
The
centro, que es
greatest
donde
violence
están
that I
supuestamente las
experienced it
personas formadas, educadas, diplomadas,
were
tituladas, ¿sí?
the downtown area where
Porque ahí es donde está
educated people
funcionando el
live,
Estado, voy a
supposedly,
decir. Y entonces es
because
cuando
that's where the
fuimos a la
state
justicia, cuando fuimos a la
rules, and
comisaría,
that's where
cuando fuimos
we
a un
are
hospital,
more oppressed.
cuando
When you
fuimos a un centro
talk
de
to
salud, cuando fuimos a la
magistrates,
escuela,
hospitals,
¿sí?
judges, health
Cuando
centers, when
fuimos
you go to
incluso
school,
a
that's where you
comprar,
experience the worst type of
allá en esos
violence.
espacios hemos sufrido la mayor
Or when you go
violencia, digo,
buy
¿no?
something,
De esos lugares se nos ha
that's
expulsado,
where
se
you're
nos ha
also
corrido.
attacked.
¿Cómo podemos construir
We're being
nuestra
expelled,
defensa
we're being
colectiva para
kicked out,
lograr
we're
los
being
derechos humanos
insulted. So
de
how
un
can we
hábitat
create a
para
collective
todos?
defense
A mí
to
me
achieve
parece
the
que la gran
human
herramienta
rights
es la
of a
educación,
habitat for
pero desde
everyone?
una
I think that the
epistemología
most
feminista,
important tool is
transfeminista,
education,
¿no?
but from a
Necesitamos
feminist
corrernos de
epistemology,
esa
trans
dicotomía
feminist
binaria,
epistemology,
exhaustiva y
we need
excluyente
to
propuestas desde la
hold on
heteronorma.
to that
Desarmando
and
todo
forget
binomio, voy a
about the
decir, en la
exclusion, the
forma
heteronorm that is binary and everything. So
la que tenemos en construir ciudadanía. Otra herramienta
this is how we
importantísima
should create our
es la
citizenship. Another
política.
important
Sí,
tool is
digo,
politics.
nosotras, digo, las personas que estamos dentro de los feminismos, necesitamos involucrarnos
Those of us
en la
who are
política, en la
feminists,
política
we need to
partidaria.
get
Digo,
engaged
necesitamos empezar a
in
modificar, voy a decir,
in
la forma de
partisanship.
hacer política.
We need to start
Tenemos que empezar a
changing
dar
the way
cuenta
in which
que esa idea
politics are and
maquiavélica
policies are created.
de
We need to
el fin
get rid
justifica
of the
los
Machiavellian
medios,
idea
digo,
that the
no
end
puede
justifies the
ser la
means.
regla si estamos
Not
pensando la
anymore. That cannot be the
desopresión.
rule
¿Sí?
if we are
Entonces por eso
thinking
es tan
about the
importante
fight
que
against
todo
oppression.
esto lo llevemos
That
también
is
a
why
nuestros
it's so
espacios
important
políticos
for
para
all of
empezar,
this to be
voy a
taken
decir,
to our political
a disfrutar
spheres
también
so that
el
we can start
sentido dentro
questioning
de la
and
política y
disputing
dentro de la
the mere
política
sense
partidaria,
of
porque
our
de esa forma
policies
vamos a
and our
poder construir políticas públicas,
participants
sí,
policies so that we can create
eficientes.
public
Si no,
policies
tendremos
that are
más
efficient.
leyes y más leyes y más leyes,
Because if
y
not, we
después
will get
resulta
more and
que
more laws
eso
in
en
the
la práctica
writing that are
termina
not
siendo,
transformed into a
digo, un
reality,
código hermoso, sí,
and they are just a
escrito.
beautiful piece of
Otra de las
paper,
cuestiones que me
but
parece
have no
relevante es
real
el
meaning.
trabajo en red,
Another matter that is
¿sí?
relevant is
El trabajo en red con una
networking.
pedagogía permanente. Nosotros
Networking
necesitamos
following a
dar
permanent
cuenta
pedagogy.
en nuestros
We need
barrios, en
to
nuestros
go
pueblos, en
to our
nuestras
slums,
ciudades,
to our neighborhoods,
digo,
to our
dar
towns, to
cuenta, voy a
peoples,
desnaturalizar
and
toda la
explain
violencia a la que
to
hemos asistido a lo largo de los
question
siglos.
violence and
Voy a decir que
denormalize it
cuando
because we've
una
experienced it
habita
for
desde un no
centuries. And
lugar, lo hace desde
if
una
you are
certeza,
inhabiting
¿no?
from a
La
non-place,
certeza es
you
esta,
do
voy a
this
decir que
from a
todo lo
certain
que es para el
certainty.
resto no es
And
para
the
uno.
certainty is that
¿Sí? Y
everything that
entonces
is
surge
for
ahí
the
el
rest of the
arte.
people
Y
is
esa
not
primera obra de
meant for
arte es
me.
justamente
But this is where
construirse
art
a una
begins.
misma y
The
una
art
aprende a
of
tejer
constructing
redes,
yourself,
aprende
to
a
weave
buscar
your own
aliadas,
networks,
personas
to look for
aliadas,
your own
¿sí?
allies,
A construir
people
una
you
realidad
resonate
que no
with,
duela
and construct
tanto.
a reality that
Y
is
voy a
not so
cerrar
hurtful.
diciendo que mientras
And I'll
haya
conclude
que
by saying
sobrevivir,
that
lo
as long
discutiremos
as we are
todo.
busy
Y el único
surviving,
consenso será la ternura.
we'll have to
Un
discuss
hábitat
everything. The only
construido desde la
consensus
ternura,
is for us
pensando en la
kindness, because a
multiplicidad de
habit that is
identidades y de
constructed through
necesidades,
tenderness and kindness, thinking about the
seguramente va a
multiplicity
ser
of
un
identities
hábitat
and needs
justo.
will be one that
Muchísimas
is fair.
gracias.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Qué emoción.
Wasn't it touching to listen to their testimonials? We thank the both of them. Okay, now I would like to introduce from Yemen, Rana Lanem, who is the representative of the Middle East and Northern African region at the HIC Board, the 2020-2024 mandate. She is a politician, human rights activist, General Secretary, Joint General Secretary of the Public Union Party. She's been the only woman to present in her delegation the conversations in the peace processes at Stockholm as well as Geneva 2018. She's also headed the Office of United Nations and she was part of the consultant delegation of the government during the peace talks of Yemen, White in 2016. All right, so we'll start sharing her clip and then we'll go back to our reflections.
تلعب المرأة اليمنية دورا أساسيا في
Yemeni women
والعمل في الزراعة
play
والرعي
a major role in agriculture.
وأغلبية سكان الريف من النساء
The
والأطفال.
women who live in the rural areas, women and children, men go to work in cities. With the war that is happening due to the Houthi militias in Yemen, this area includes more than half the population, meaning that more than 15 million people have gone into the dispute area, which caused the displacement of more than the half of the population, the majority of which are women, elderly, and children, at a time when men went to fight, and now women have become the main supporter of the family. Women in areas of dispute were caring for children and the elderly, at the same time preserving the land where they went back to the land, and they suffered a lot where the Houthi militias have planted a lot of landmines in agricultural land. Every day we hear about a woman dying and a child being injured. Yemeni women suffer a lot of difficulties at the time of peace to preserve their land and housing. In many cases, they are not given the ownership according to the traditions, where men in many areas of Yemen are only entitled to own land. In many cases, women don't keep ownership of the land. Women also, despite their incessant work, their returns are only in the hands of the men. Despite all these difficulties during the war, during the peace times, the war came to double responsibility on the shoulders of women.
That was very painful. Women in times of war. Now, finally, let me see. We will now share from Corporación Región, which is an organization in Medellín, Colombia, that also worked in the construction of a fairer society, one that is democratic and peaceful, with actions to contribute to the creation of a citizenship that is committed to the construction of peace and that can contribute to the strengthening of democracy, the full respect of rights, gender equality, and the defense of public spaces. Luis Amparo Sanchez Medina will share her testimonial.
nombre es Juan Diego, tengo
My name is Juan
26
Diego.
años,
I'm
vivo en la
26
ciudad
years
de
old.
Medellín, en el
I live
barrio
in the
Bello
city of
Oriente,
Medellín,
vengo de la Comuna
the
13.
Bello Oriente neighborhood.
Actualmente me dedico a la
Columna
producción
13.
musical.
Currently, I am a
Me gusta
musician.
mucho eso junto con mi
I
hermano,
like
transmitir pues como todos esos sueños a través de la
with
música,
my band
las
what we feel
expectativas de
through the
soñar un
music,
poco, expresar pues como todo ese
so as
talento
to be
por
able to
medio de la
rescue
música.
dreams.
Bueno, yo
It
como
is
les
through
venía
music
diciendo, vengo
that
de la
I'm
Comuna
developing
13, donde me sucedió
my
eso
skills.
por culpa del
I
conflicto
come from
armado,
Columna 13 where, because of the armed conflict,
víctima de la
I was
violencia,
victim of
por decirlo así,
violence.
con una bala perdida. A la edad de 15 años perdí mi movilidad, sufrí
I was shot
una lesión
by a
medular.
loose bullet. That's how I lost my mobility because of spine injury.
Corporación Región es una organización que recién ha cumplido 32 años de vida. Es una organización que en Medellín, en Colombia, ha entendido la importancia de trabajar por el conocimiento de la ciudad, de las problemáticas, que se ha comprometido con la transformación, con la incidencia en las políticas públicas en beneficio de las diferentes poblaciones con las que hemos venido trabajando. Y hemos entendido también en Corporación Región la importancia de trabajar con otros. Y trabajar con ese otros tiene un asunto muy importante cuando pensamos en el derecho a la ciudad, porque hemos trabajado este concepto con América Latina de la mano de la Coalición Internacional del Hábitat, de la Plataforma Global por el Derecho a la Ciudad, pero en lo local de una manera muy importante desde el 2014 con Fuerza Incluyente, que son personas con discapacidad. Conjuntamente hemos entendido el derecho a la ciudad como ese derecho a vivir, a ocupar, a transformar, a disfrutar la ciudad, los asentamientos humanos, los pueblos inclusivos, sostenibles. Pero aquí está el asunto, ¿cómo entendemos lo inclusivo? ¿Cómo entender lo inclusivo, por ejemplo, desde la discapacidad? Esto ha sido muy importante, porque aquí sí que hay que ver qué es la participación plena y la democracia. ¿Cómo hablar de que una ciudad lo es si, por ejemplo, hay barreras físicas, si hay barreras actitudinales? Esto se nota mucho cuando vamos con las personas con discapacidad. Por eso la apuesta por hacer una pedagogía para transformar imaginarios, para romper con las barreras, para construir una ciudad inclusiva.
El discurso de fuerza incluyente en torno al tema de accesibilidad ha crecido, se ha transformado. Digamos que cuando nosotros empezamos este ejercicio de dinámicas sociales, hablamos de una ciudad mal diseñada. Y nos dimos cuenta que la ciudad no estaba mal diseñada, era que faltaba más manos para construirla. Entonces nosotros propusimos eso, de construir una ciudad distinta, una ciudad amable, con entornos accesibles. Entonces eso es el crecimiento de fuerza. Ya lo concebimos de otra manera, una manera de trabajar.
Now we understand things differently. It is about working together to work along with everyone else. That is the basic premise we know, embrace as a
Entonces nos
collective.
incorpora un concepto, el artículo cuarto de la convención, y es el diseño universal. Ya nosotros entonces empezamos a hablar, no es que hagamos cosas mal hechas, construcciones no con las medidas, y luego hacer adecuaciones que primero le decían a uno, no, eso con una tablita le hacemos y ahí le ponemos, o le corremos la puerta, o no hay baño, pero aquí le ponemos una cortina. No, sino que el diseño universal empieza a poner retos, es que no hacemos accesibilidad para las personas que tienen discapacidad, sino que generamos accesibilidad para todas las personas, indistintamente de su condición.
Access for everyone from the very beginning, regardless of their
descubierto
condition.
muchas cosas, ¿cierto? En nosotros mismos.
I think that we have
Porque aún
discovered many
nosotros
things
con la
about
discapacidad que
ourselves,
tenemos, pues
even
a
because
veces
even
solo
ourselves
pensamos en
with our
nosotros.
disabilities,
Entonces,
sometimes
desde
we're only
fuerza
thinking
hemos
about
como en
ourselves.
esas articulaciones
We're talking
hemos
about
descubierto
others.
como las necesidades
So at Fuerza,
de las
we
otras
have
personas,
understood
¿cierto?
that there's a
Entonces, tener
need
en cuenta de que, por ejemplo,
of other
pues yo puedo
people that we don't
movilizarme, ¿cierto?
understand,
Puedo
and we should
caminar.
consider
Pero entonces cuando yo voy en ese
everyone.
proceso,
For
de
instance,
pronto
I have
que
certain
no hay
type of
rampa, entonces yo
mobility I
mismo
can
pienso
walk.
en los otros, ve, aquí
But
no
then
podría
when
estar esta
I
persona.
go and see that there's no ramp, I immediately think about there's no access
Esperamos
to
que se
wheelchairs here.
perfeccione algún día.
There's so many things that need
Y
to
falta
change.
ver
Let's
si
hope
nos,
we
si
can
nos
change
permiten
everything one day.
disfrutar de eso.
we'll have to wait and see if we are allowed to enjoy our gains.
Que un Estado
The
nos
only
brinde
guarantee we
con
have is the
calidad la
power of
accesibilidad
the
que nos
state
merecemos.
to bring us the access that we deserve.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Luis Fernando Tortua, hago parte del colectivo Fuerza Incluyente. Esta sensibilización que estamos haciendo es las personas en situación de discapacidad. Muchas veces las personas se refieren a las personas discapacitadas como discapacitado, deficiente, enfermito, personas con discapacidad y discapacidades. Entonces, la forma corta de decir es personas en situación de discapacidad. No se dice lisiado, minusválido, inválido, paralítico, nublado, cojo, tullido. La forma correcta de decir es persona con discapacidad física o movilidad reducida.
Person with a physical disability or reduced mobility.
Bueno, don Guillermo, entonces, usted ha notado que de pronto, pues muchas personas, cuando ven una persona con discapacidad, tienen un trato a veces, digamos que no es como el más indicado, ¿cierto?
The treatment
por
is not
ejemplo,
right.
esto de, ay, mira,
Am I right? For
ese
instance,
inválido, ¿cierto?
or this weird,
O
or
este
this
tullido, o el cojito, el mochito, ¿cierto? Esas palabras para uno, no sé, son como crueles, lo digo yo pues en lo personal, ¿no? Entonces, por ejemplo, una persona que está en silla de ruedas es pues, usuario de silla de ruedas, ¿cierto?
No le paran, siguen derecho, porque como tienen que hacer la labor de bajarse, desarmar la silla, no, que la silla no me cabe, que va a perder tiempo, entonces optan por seguir de largo.
Exacto. Pero entonces, aquí yo le estoy explicando es como el trato, ¿cierto? Que deben de tener como a cuando se van a referir a una persona con discapacidad, ¿cierto? Por ejemplo, pues en mi caso yo tengo una discapacidad física, ¿cierto? Ausencia de mis extremidades. Una persona de silla de ruedas, pues es una persona usuaria de silla de ruedas. El ciego se le puede decir ciego, o de baja, pues o
or somebody who has
pérdida de visión.
pues
eyesight
la
problems.
palabra es
weak eyesight.
ciego o discapacidad
Well,
visual,
the right
¿cierto?
word is
Discapacidad
blind
visual,
or visual disability.
También está la
Right?
discapacidad
Person with a visual
intelectual,
disability.
los de
There's
talla
also
baja, que
intellectual
pues, los que le
disability.
dicen enanos,
Enanos.
¿cierto?
Short people
No sería
or
la manera
dwarfs,
indicada, sería de
right?
talla baja.
That's not the
Usted
right
tranquilo
way
puede
to
abrir
refer to
el
them.
cierre
It's just
primero
a person of a
y en la
short
parte de
size.
adelante
So,
ahí está el
if you could please open up the zipper first, if that's where you'll find him.
Y acá hay
Could you please
este adhesivo
And now
que
here's
usted va a poner en su taxi porque
this
hace parte
easy
del
tape.
incluyente.
You are going to
Muy bien.
Muchas gracias.
put it here on. You can see it. Thank you. Yes, of course.
La apuesta pedagógica, precisamente por una ciudad incluyente, se detiene en la experiencia con ese otro, una experiencia cara a cara, mediadora, una experiencia en la cual no se profundiza para nada las relaciones de poder, por el contrario, y en este caso es contundente. Socialmente a las personas con discapacidad se les ha visto como menores, como que dan lástima, y en este caso cuando hacen esa pedagogía, por ejemplo con quien define el transporte urbano, esa pedagogía en la cual tienen tanto que aportarle para decirle, por ejemplo, qué significa nombrar con dignidad a las personas, pues viene de las personas con discapacidad en ese ejercicio de concienciación, que no es simplemente sensibilización. La concienciación es que las personas comprendan, que conozcan y que se hagan cargo de ese conocimiento, es decir, que empiecen a actuar distinto.
Are accountable of that knowledge. That's to say that they start changing their behaviors. I loved it. All right, I think that what's coming up next is a Jamboard exercise, I think. So who's going to facilitate? I am going to ask the facilitator to help me with this so that I don't make a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mara. And I think what we just decided in the background is that we really want to give space for questions and answers and reflection to those three very impactful and very strong videos. And I'm very glad to see and to say that we have people from Red por un Hábitat Justo here. We have Luz Amparo here from Cooperación Región, and people from the collective Fuerza Incluyente. And we also have with us our facilitator, Marina Kamal, who is from Yemen and who has been working together with Rana Ghanem. So she would be happy to also, explain and share a bit more about her testimonial. So I just want to open the floor to any questions and also to see a bit, what has resonated with you, with your own experiences across the regions. Who would like to start first? And don't be shy. Perhaps also just to reiterate that if you don't feel comfortable with this being recorded, then you just let us know and we can cut that out and this won't go public. So if there is something that you want to share, please just feel free that this is a safe space to do so. Belén, please go ahead.
Hola, ¿se escucha?
Sí.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Belén from Argentina, social organization Techo. I just wanted to ask Nadia a question. She was on one of the clips and she's here, so I'd like to ask her, what are the initiatives, the changes that you think would need to be proposed for urbanization processes in popular areas so that the needs, the specific needs of diversity populations are taken into consideration during the planning? Thank you. Can I answer?
Dale, sí,
yes, please go ahead. Well, let's see. It's a bit theoretical. I'll try to summarize. We are living here in Argentina with a identity law that is depathologizing trans. So my identity card says I'm a woman. And we're also trying to inhabit our bodies. That is the first type of habitat that we transvestites have to start saying, I do have a penis, but it's not the penis of the patriarchy. I'm a woman in spite of that. So when I think about the design of houses and neighborhoods, and they're all heterosexual everywhere you go, they're always considering the logic of cis heterosexuality for my mom and the dad and babies and the dogs and all of those cliches we have in our minds, because we have also grown in this type of an environment to conceive the world from the eyes of heterosexuality, from the perspective of this regime that creates a ranking of people. So when I think about a space for transvestites in terms of the habitat, I am thinking first of all about safety. How safe are those spaces for ourselves? And then it's also related to the construction with the brick and mortar, if you may. But it's also, it has to do with cultural changes. We saw during the last clip how we should refer with the terms we should use for people with a disability, with a reduced mobility. And they gave us examples of more respectful terms. That it has to do with attitudes. It has to do with understanding that if we want to have a safe habitat, we need to have a type of justice that can understand us as subjects of rights, that we have them. We don't need to fight for them anymore. And some of us might be quote unquote privileged because we came from a family that was accepting as best as they could. And so we have the ability to occupy certain spaces that are relevant. One of the things that we need to be able to do as trans-spaces when we get together is to ask ourselves, what do we want to do with the habitat we would like to have? Because we're not dreaming, we're not daring to dream in a different type of habitat yet. We're so busy with other things. So when I spoke about prostitution on the clip, it's still a main income, because even though there's a law that is providing quotas for trans positions, still when there's a change in administration, we go back to square one.
So in a society that does have this positive law, which looks at labor representation and is trying to say, what are the different aspects that should be there? If we're talking about having an average of 35 or 40-year-old people, the screen froze for a bit. But what do we need to live in this country? Maybe we're talking about 83 or 84. There was no democracy that was achieved in 83 or 84, but there was no democracy for trans people. We can begin to think maybe a bit more about democracy with the law, but we are subject to rights. And people have to understand that it's from there, at that point, that we begin to demand certain issues. Just having this little label of ADN, of DNA, and say, this is me. I think that these things that we're dreaming about, first, we must be able to dream, and then be thinking about fixed income and being able to rely on this. And then after that, we have to be able to dream about what would that habitat mean for us. Many sisters live in different communities. They live in communities in Buenos Aires or in other places in Argentina, sisters who have been actually expelled, pushed off of other places, and they're trying to live in community. And I think that we have to think about disputing this idea of what is a family, because as we think about making sense of this, and in all of Latin America, this idea of the day of the family or family, there's so many anti-rights movements talking about family, and it's not a lesser important fact when we talk about the importance of anti-rights movements. Perhaps we can dream. Many people are doing so and talk about having children, having equity, and being together as a couple with one person, or maybe with two people. Anything is possible to dream. And so it's really important that, I think, at least now, in my way of thinking, this question that you've asked me, is that we need to start to think about this idea of habitat, people who live alone, in which spaces. Because if we think about independent people living alone, we are thinking maybe about reduced spaces, that very small kitchen, that room. Maybe there's a living room, as if that person could never have a gathering of friends. It's never considered in these smaller ideas. So let's imagine how we could have this living or family or joint eating space, for example.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nadia, for those very valuable reflections, and also the call for imagining, and daring to think and envision differently our habitats. I wonder, Marina, perhaps, if you would like to share a bit more, because Rana has shared very much on the struggles and the violences that women are facing. If you would like to share a bit more about the advocacy activities that you're doing to confront those violences. Thank you.
صحيح. شكرا جزيلا.
True. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this aspect. As Mrs. Rana mentioned, women in Yemen suffer a lot of violations and gender-based violence, particularly being a woman. Women in Yemen are branded under what is not supposed to be done, or shame. And there are many areas that don't allow women to own homes or land. And in many areas, even the urban ones, women cannot sign a contract, a lease contract, except if there is the presence of a man in this contract. This poses a major difficulty for women, particularly during the war now, because most men either have died or are in the battleground. The problems are doubled and the violations are doubled against women with the moving from the areas of conflict to safe areas or relatively safe areas. The roads have a lot of landmines. There are mountain areas that are very difficult. They can even called, some roads are even called the road of death. And the problem here is that in one area, if it takes 2 hours, it could take until 7 to 8 hours to cross these mountain areas for women to reach a safe place for shelter or for living. Women during this period suffer a lot of violations, harassment, rape, difficulty to obtain food or clothes. They are on the ground for days even. This problem is increasing every day, particularly during the war, the current war. I also would like to mention that during this period, there are more cases of rape, and there is a higher rate of drug dealing and human trafficking. We are not allowed to mention this aspect because women cannot even reach the police to report safely. As long as they report, they are taken back to her family or the person who is in charge of her, so to speak. I would like to also mention a point that I had forgotten with relation to displacement and the deteriorated economic situation due to the war, and in order not to transfer land that women inherit, in order not to transfer them from men to women, girls and young girls were forcefully being married off, which increased after the war to guarantee that the land remains within the framework of the family to the brother, for example, in order for the woman not to obtain the land and for the land to remain within the framework of the family. This is increasing every day. Also, taking them out of the education system. A lot of violations happen because there are no safe lands during the war in Yemen during this period. This is my intervention. I am here for any question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marina. And I think it's great, of course, that you're part of the facilitator team, so that we can in the next 2 sessions in the next 2 weeks also build on, you know, the activities that you're doing to confront those many like really huge obstacles and violences which women are facing in your country and in the region. I want to give the floor to Koro again, because she didn't have time before to respond to the questions that you posed to her. I think there was just a bit of an overlap with the interpretation. So Koro, if there is anything that you want to say as wrapping up your session, and then Hassem. Thank you. You're still on mute.
Ok, merci tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to tell you what we are doing on the Women's Cooperative. I excuse my apologies because of the technical failures that I had to face today. That is why I was so nervous, and maybe that's why things didn't work out well at the beginning. I hope that you have liked my presentation, and there are so many things that I was not able to tell you because we did not have any more time. But right now, I have shared on Google Drive my presentation. I think that they have shared it with you. And I think that I would like to ask a question. Obviously, there was no interpretation, but it was very, very interesting to see the images. Translation would be welcome to accompany those images. Moi, j'ai vu des personnes handicapées dans a wheelchair, and that was something that is an action undertaken by civil society. But I would like to know, are there any actions that have been undertaken by the government for those handicapped persons to improve their daily lives and have access to public transportation or habitat? That would be my question. And I am very, very happy to be here in this platform. And I think that next time we will be able to have more exchange. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Coro. And I'm sorry that the interpretation didn't go through to your end. I wonder, Luz Amparo, or if someone is joining from Fuerza Incluyente, if you'd like to respond to that question on the involvement of government into improving the situation of people in situations of disability.
Sería mejor si pudiera intervenir. Me gustaría mucho que interviniera Germán.
Is Germán here? It would be so much better if Germán could answer. Yes, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Germán Chavarria, and I'm part of the Inclusive Force group. And thank you for that question, Coro. We have 50 million people in Colombia, and there's 2.5 million people in our city. And it's the city where we've had the most work to see that there is accessible, inclusive transport, that there are bathroom units that are also accessible. But truly, the government, since 2006, I think is what we're talking about. We're talking about 16, 17 years now. There are laws and there are norms at the municipal level, but they are not being applied. And so this is a city where we've had more work in this area, and we've really pushed to have different processes to make sure that these norms are enforced through different mechanisms, really trying to visibilize, and you saw that in the video. And we're trying to look at these different actions. We're talking about marches, we're talking about protests. We're talking about different ways to speak face-to-face or confront what is going on. But there is not a large number of accessible vehicles, but sometimes the driver doesn't even know how to operate those features of their public transport units. Now that's just in our city, but what about the rest of the countries? We're the capital city, and we're not even the capital city. Bogota is the capital city. They have 8 or 9 million people in Bogota, but Bogota doesn't even have an accessible public transport system in the very capital of our country. So that gives you an idea of the precarious situation throughout the country. And now we have been able to keep organizing with our organizations and with our different governments. So that would be a response to what Cora was asking. And of course, for everyone, we're quite attentive to any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Herman, for being here, for being with us, and for sharing your experiences. And I think this is precisely what we try to, put forward with these interregional conversations, to see how do different issues resonate, how do different strategies, different ways of involving with the state, with government, resonate across the regions, and how can we start building alliances, to strengthen our advocacy around certain issues. I'm really sorry that we have, again, to close this co-learning space for today. As usual, 2 hours is too short, and we know that by now already. What I would like to do just before we finish is to briefly share my screen, because we know that for some, the engagement with Google Classroom is just the first time. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're learning together on how to best use and appropriate this space. So first of all, thank you to everyone who has already contributed to the discussion, who has introduced themselves on this landing page, on this first page. You should have received this week again an email with the instructions of how to log into this Google Classroom. But if not, please just send an email to the HIC address. Nadine, perhaps you can share it in the chat again. So this is a space that you can appropriate, use yourself in order to share your own experiences. You can comment on other people's experiences here, share your concerns in whatever language you feel most comfortable with. And we try to respond because the team is working across the different languages. In the section of the classwork is where you have all the information and the recordings of the session available. So the session materials from last week, for example, the presentations, you can see them here. They're subtitled as well. The Jamboard exercises, here you see a summary of the preparation exercises for this week in the 4 different languages. So you can read through the contributions of other people. And we also have libraries for each of the sessions where you can please just share through comments what you would like to add. So thank you, for example, to Alicia, who has shared a very insightful YouTube video, as well as a tool on gender-based violence. As for the preparation for next session, we have another task which we will share with you as well via email. What we want to talk about next time is care and other works. So we're asking you to share with us what the most typical stereotypes are that women, children, and diversities face in your country, and what are the stereotypes about their roles as carers specifically. So here you can just add your comments there. And as usual, we also are asking for your feedback and for comments on the sessions by just answering 3 very brief questions. What was a key thing you learned in this session today? Which aspect did you enjoy the most? And which aspect can we improve on? I know I've been running through this quite quickly, but don't worry, we'll send you a wrap-up email with all the information that I've just shared. I don't know if there are any other questions, any other last thoughts for this session. And if not, I thank especially all our guests from today and everyone who shared their testimonies, their videos, which have been really, really strong and really, really wonderful to kick off the discussion and the alliances. Thank you so much for sharing this space, and have a good morning, evening, afternoon, midday, wherever you are. Thank you so much. Bye.
Muchas gracias.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Everyone, thank you.
Adiós. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, everyone. Gracias. Merci beaucoup.
Adiós.
Adiós. Gracias.
Adiós.